There's two people joining. Okay, folks. Well, why don't we get started? It's 7:01. Good evening. We're pleased to have so many people online. I do realize that we're competing with the Blue Jays game, so we will start and finish on time. And I really appreciate having you guys all here. So my name, just want to do some intros and explain how this is going to go tonight. So my name is Michelle Petrusevic. It's been a pleasure for me to run the Parent Talk for the past 3 years. And as of this year, Lauren Datulu, who is on the line, will be taking over. And I'm just helping her out to kind of get the lay of the land, if you will. So today we're super, super happy to have Sean Martinez back with us. It was a very popular session last year. He's going to talk about university preparation, and we will also have some Q&A at the end. So my ask is just to please hold your questions towards the end. We will have that, and I will pass it on to Lauren to do the land acknowledgements and and the prayer. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, guide us as parents in all of our decisions. May we walk in wisdom, led by your Spirit, and never stray from your path. Let our lives be directed by your divine counsel in every step we take. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all our ways submit to him, and he will make our path straight. Lord, guide our parents' paths in your wisdom. Amen. Blessed Edmund Rice, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. Amen. In the name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. And we would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Musqueam Nation and extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, learn, and play on this beautiful territory.
Great. I guess we could pass it on to Sean. And sorry, I should also acknowledge that Theo Gonzalez is helping us to deliver this. He's our tech person. So thank you, Theo. And Sean, over to you.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Welcome, everyone. So I think we will start this evening with a poll, just kind of so we can get the lay of the land with regards to who we have in the room. And that'll give us a good idea of kind of what horizon you guys are thinking right now. Like, is this coming up for next year? Is this kind of still a few years for you? Okay, so mostly grade 11s, some grade 10s, and some below grade 10. For those just joining now, we're going through a poll right now to see kind of who's in the room and what grade your kids are in. Okay, let me see. Oh, we have 77 people, so the poll should pop up in front of you. If not, I think you can go to the three dots and look at the polls. The three-dotted menu, and then click the polls. Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll run another 30 seconds and then close it. I think we're settling in on the kind of the indicative, what kind of group we have today. Was this specifically sent to the grade 11s, Lauren, Michelle?
It was sent to the entire school, I believe.
Okay.
We're not asking you if there's anybody in grade 12 too. I just realized.
Yeah. Well, if you're here and you're in grade 12, well,
get busy.
You'll hear about it. Don't worry. Okay, I think that'll be fine. I'm gonna end it. Okay, great. So we'll share the results, I guess, just for if anybody's curious. So most people are in grade 11. We have some grade 10s and some below grade 10. Okay, great. So, okay, so with that, I'm going to share my screen and kind of launch the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to assume everybody can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks everyone for attending. So we'll get started. So now, in the past, like last year when we did this, I was able to have my son Spencer with me to present some of the material. Unfortunately, he is in second year now, and he is just absolutely swamped with work, and so he is unable to join us tonight. So I will do my best to do justice to some of the stuff that he had spoken with, but as Michelle had mentioned, we are going to open up for questions at the end. So we'll have some time to discuss if you guys have any questions. So this is the process. It's kind of 6 steps I'm going to go through, and the context of this is that Spencer and I helped Spencer apply for university back in 2024, and there are some overarching notes I need to go over before we do that, and now, I just need to mention that this is not a substitute for the presentation that Mr. Taggart and Mr. Achille will be giving or have given this year, probably. So when you get to grade 12, for those who are grade 11, there will be another presentation for grade 11s and 12s, I think. So you should attend that one as well. There is different information from that. This one will be specific to assisting, so essentially providing a framework for how parents and students can work together to kind of get as much as possible out of the application process. Okay, with that, so I'll get started. So before I go into the steps of the process, there's kind of 2 things we want to talk about. One is maintaining the integrity of the application, and then some online tools. So maintaining the integrity of the application really is to keep in mind what the schools are. The schools are looking to build a profile of the student, right? That is the focus of the application process. And it should really reflect the student and only the student. So in the application, it should reflect who the student is, what they're interested in, what they've done, and things like that. So so with regards to parents, I'll point out that there are ways for the parents can assist the student to be able to essentially leverage and help their son be able to do more applications and more smoothly while they're actually still going to school, and they still have exams to do and all that. But they really need to stay kind of outside of the items that are actually submitted, right? So I'm going to talk about how we kind of do that and keep that line very clear. Um, and I'm going to use these symbols. So the purple parent tag and the yellow student tag throughout the presentation. So you'll see kind of who's doing what. So with that, I'll get started. The next thing here is really to talk about the online tools that you need to be aware of. Where you're going to use Google Docs. So it'll be Google Docs is very similar to Microsoft Word. It's just that it's free and it's run by Google instead of Microsoft. And you can do it online. And there's a very neat kind of sharing and editing tool that we're going to use through that. And then because Spencer actually was applying to architecture school, we were also using Canva as another tool that we that to prepare the submissions. So Canva is also free, and also allows you to collaborate. So you would set up your own accounts for each app, and then be able to collaborate on the same documents online. So these are 2 things that you should be aware of. The students will probably all be very familiar with Google Docs at the very least. Okay. Okay, so let's get into kind of the steps. So the first step, of course, is to choose your schools. Um, you need to understand it's not just a matter of choosing the school; it's really an understanding of what program you want to be in that school that you're applying for, and what are the requirements for getting into that specific program. right? So there may be things that are common to one school, like UBC has their set application, but then there will be requirements that each faculty will have that you should be aware of, right? So when Spencer was applying for architecture, there was a whole other application that you had to complete, not just the main application. So these are, so as you can see from the labels, this is something both the parent and the student should really be discussing. Um, Now, as I said, the parents' assistance can provide some leverage, meaning that if a student by themselves could probably apply to like 3 or 4 schools um, pretty well, you might be able to double that, right? Or maybe add another like another 2 or 3 schools with a parent's assistance. So again, we're trying to maintain that the application is still about the student, but a parent can leverage and help out with a lot of the things that can be done in the background that doesn't directly go into what the admissions people are actually reading, right? So but one warning that Spencer and I did go through is that we applied to about 8 schools in 2024, and we were burned out. Like he was burned out in particular as well, right? Because he was actually, writing essays and things like that. And so and then at the end of the day, we realized like we really only wanted 3 schools, right? But there was a bit of trepidation with us because there's not a lot of architecture schools in Canada, and so we ended up like casting a very wide net. But be aware that and it's also quite a pricey proposition, right? Like we probably spent like $1,000 or more, like more than $1,000 to apply for all of the schools that we did. So I think the first step really is for the parent and the student to kind of sit down and say, okay, what am what are the programs you want to apply for, right? You got to be focused enough to come down to like, okay, I want to do engineering, and then understand that like, okay, engineering, what sub is there a this are you applying for a subspecialty in engineering right away, or is that something that you do like in second year, right? Things like that. And then if that's the program you want to, well, where are the other schools that do the same program or something similar, right? How many schools you're going to apply to, which programs, and then you'll also need to be aware of the backups. Um, that sorry, not the backups. The second choices. Sometimes schools will tell you, okay, well, that's your first choice. Provide a second choice in case you don't get into the first choice. They will consider you for your second choice. So be aware of nuances like that. um, Spencer likes to note that should also be aware of the environment at the school. Make sure, and I think Mr. Taggart and Mr. Chili also echo this. Make sure that if your university you're applying to is outside of Vancouver, outside of BC, that you actually do want to go there, right? Spencer and myself, our family, actually visited Ontario in the winter just so we could really see like, okay, we looked at Queens, University of Toronto, University of Metropolitan, TMU, and Carleton and Ottawa. So we did that in the winter so we could see, okay, this is where you're going to be at that time, right? So so you're well aware of where you're actually going to be sitting when school actually starts. So that's kind of first step. Something that you probably should be doing now. It's good to already be thinking about that, even for those students who are in grade 10. I know my younger son's already talking to me about Waterloo. So okay, he's grade 9. Okay, next step. So 2, know the applications. So don't just the schools, note when the deadlines are, right? You need to know how many essays are needed, things like that. Um, but you know, the parent can go through a lot of these things to understand the application. And the applications are structured in a way where you don't have to finish it all at once. So you can save it, come back to it, right, and do it over several nights, and you don't have to like rush through it all at once. Now, you do need to find out how many essays are needed, what are the extra requirements for the specific programs you're applying for. Things might be atypical, so I'll tell you, like with the architecture, there was usually a separate application, like you actually had to set up another account and fill in another set of work, and then it had its own deadline, so you had to fulfill the deadlines for the main application, then you had to go to fulfill the deadlines for the separate application. Right? Where there's supplementary things that you have to submit, projects. UBC architecture had its own set of projects that Spencer had to actually go and build, and then photograph and then submit. Now you're also doing this in the setting of like your own exams, right, for the students. So you need to be aware of when that is happening. So you will be usually looking at the time period between October and February. um, Most schools will probably start taking applications starting at the beginning of June to the beginning of January to the end of January, and then some supplementary applications may be due sometime in February. So make sure you're aware of when the due dates are, and line that up with special events, sporting events that if your child's in extracurriculars and things like that. Okay. Now, so after you've done that, the parent, this is kind of what the parent can do is really to start inputting the basic information. So I have here on the screen the OUAC, which is Ontario's central application, and the Education Planner BC, which is BC's central application. So one of the things you should be discussing is what login name or email you're going to use. So you have to use the student's email and what passwords you're going to use. So you probably use the same passwords for all of them, just because you're going to be logging in and out of them frequently, right? And you can only really work off of one account because you want to be able to leverage the same, the effort that a parent can do. I also have on the screen two types of transcripts that you're going to need to be able to input the basic info, right? One of them is your Ministry of Education. Now, Ministry of Education transcript. Now, Mr. Taggart, Mr. Chili, and the session they will have for the grade 11s and 12s will tell your student how they're supposed to get these, right? These are important. The key thing about the BC Ministry of Education transcript. Now, these are both unofficial because the only official transcripts that the schools will receive are directly from the Ministry of Education, right? So these are unofficial. You can download them for your own records, but at least you have them because when you're actually doing the applications, there will be some of them where you have to input the specific courses that your son is taking in grade 10, 11, and 12. And in most cases, if you're applying to a Canadian school, they will actually have the course codes that BC uses. So as you can see with the BC Ministry um, transcript, they actually have the four-letter codes in the middle, and that's what you're going to use to actually input it into the application. Now, the Ministry of Education one goes only up to grade 11. Some grade 12 classes that the student took in grade 11 will show up, but it'll only go up to grade 11. So your grade 12 classes will only show up in the transcript that you can get from the school, right? So that's the one with the VC seal behind it. So those ones will have the ones you're taking now. Now, the only quirk here is now you have to go and maybe do a little bit of research, or I'm sure Mr. Taggart, Mr. Chili can tell you what the four letter codes. There's a four-letter code and a number that goes with each of those courses, and those you'll need to know those to be able to input it into the application. All right. So these are things then that the parent can do. They can go through it and essentially start to input the basic stuff, right? Name, age, gender, address, right? Like, and then what school you're from and all that stuff that the student doesn't necessarily need to do, right? These are just basic things that you're inputting. Select, the parent can go and, because you've already talked about it, the parent can go and select the specific programs that you're applying for, select the second choices, all that, right? But remember, you can save and you don't have to finish everything all at once. So if the parent's going through it and be like, oh, I should talk to my son about this, right? Start noting those down, right? Save the application, go talk about it again, and the parent can go back and make the selections. Okay. So the next step is then input. So after you've inputted the basic information, then there's copying the question. So this is where Google Docs comes into play. So you would take a Google Docs. Spencer and I essentially set up one document for each school we were applying to. So on the screen here, you can see our setup for University of Toronto and Carleton Bachelor of Architecture or something like that. So what I did then was I was copying the questions. So not just the specific question itself, but all the instructions that go with the question as well. And then make sure you also include the word counts, right? So as you can see here on the left side, it says between 250 and 650 words, right? And then on the right side, you can see for Carleton, there's 150 word max, 250 to 300 words. So you know, your student already knows, like, okay, when they go in and log in to the their to the Google Doc, then they'll be able to actually know, okay, this is how much I'm going to write, right? They're not just going to write as much as they want because there's going to be a word limit. The nice thing about Google Docs as well, just like Microsoft Word, is you can highlight all your things and then ask it to count the number of words, right? So that way, then you know about how much you're gonna have to write. And you can see here, it's not they're not out looking for very long essays. They're not really essays. They're more just like statements. The longest one was the really 300 words, as you can see from Carleton, right? That was already long. 350 was rare, right? Usually it's like 150, 200 words were about max. So you really have to be succinct with what you're applying for. So parents are setting this up, right? You're not answering the questions. You're just copying down all the essay questions. You filled in all the simple answers, like, as I said, like name, address, that sort of date of birth and all that thing. But these are then you're copying these into the Google Docs so that then your student doesn't have to go log into each individual application. And also the good thing about doing it in Google Docs is you can save different versions of the same response. And then later on, when you have multiple responses, because you're going to be working on these, but hopefully you started early enough that you'll be working on these for at least a month or two, and you'll be able to kind of go back, shift them around, copy questions like, oh, that response I had for um, that response I had for U of T really works with this Carleton one, or like, my Waterloo essay for that question sounds very similar to something UBC asked, right? So you can actually move them around and edit them a little bit. So that's step 3. Step 4. So this is for the student, right? So usually ordinary Spencer would talk about this. So I'll do my best to kind of cover what he had spoken about. So when you're actually sitting down to draft your essays, so if you followed these other steps, then all you're doing is you're going in, logging into Google Docs, opening the document that your parent has already set up. There's a question. You should be able to read everything that you need to start answering the question, right? So you start drafting. So what Spencer emphasized was that you should focus on being as unique as possible with your responses. These admissions reviewers are reading thousands of applications, right? You want to stand out. You don't have to lie, but you should really dig deep and think about what really makes you unique. What would be something that they would not have seen that makes you different? Look at that and kind of see how you can talk about those types of things. And then you just draft. You draft your first response as early as you can. That way, then you can come back to it. So, one day you start with U of T, you draft a few responses, you set it aside, right? The next day you work on Carleton's application, you set that aside. The next day you work on Waterloo, and then after that you go back and you look at your U of T stuff again, and you do and you slowly go through that way. So that's the key about starting really early, because then it lets you really marinate on the things you're writing and allows you to really get down to, like, what you really want to express, and you're not rushing through it and trying to get it all done all at once. Okay. So as you can see here on the screen, we did put it's one document for each school that we applied to. And then Spencer would draft like within each one of those, right? Make sure you keep to your length, um, and tell a story, right? Like, I think that's one of the key things is, um, stories tend to stick better in people's memory, right? So if you can find some unique aspect of what makes you different, and you can tell a story around it, that usually will help you become more memorable. So as I said, this is this is a Spencer slide, so I'm doing my best here. So build a story, right, and work on it over time. So you're building it up, like you kind of write a few sentences each day, kind of get it together, and then come back editing it over and over again. Kind of helps you not have to try and do it all at once, right? Opening sentences are key, right? Spencer's highlighted kind of the things that the way he wrote this one, right? Kind of digging down and looking for that thing that really he felt that made him different and unique. Um, and then so you kind of write your opening sentence, make it as catchy as possible, right? Um, and then you go at the end and you kind of sum everything back up, right? So make sure that your ending sentences also kind of sum back up your key points, right? And just remember, like they're reading thousands of applications, you want to stand out. As you can see here, this is a 1500 character, not a 1500 word. It's 1500 characters. So when you highlight it and ask Google Docs to count your document, make sure you know if it's like 1500 characters or 1500 words, right? And as I said, like 300 words is usually pretty long for the things that that these admissions folks are asking for, right? Okay. Okay, so the next step goes back to the parents. So as I said before, you have to make sure that you keep the application true to the applicant, which is the student only, right? So the way that we've structured this review and editing portion is really giving the student the choice to accept or decline certain suggestions, right? So what you're going to do is within Google Docs, there is this button you can choose to change the mode. You go from editing to suggesting, and then what happens? So this would be for on the parent side. So the parent should have their own separate Google account, and then they can open the same document, right, with their account, and then they can go in, switch to suggesting, and they can type in changes to the document without completely obliterating what was already written before, right? And as you can see here on the screen, like these are my markings, right, to change to suggest to Spencer, okay, here's some wording that I think. And this was not done in isolation. Like I'm not in a room somewhere. Like I'll go to him and be like, hey, this sentence doesn't make sense to me. What were you trying to say? Right? And he'll tell me, okay, well, this was what I was trying to express. Like, okay, let me think of a better, like what I think would be a better way to say it. And then I'd write it down and it's marked. Right. So that's is key because then student can still see, okay, that's what I wrote, this is what my parents suggesting, things like that. So parents, if you're not the one comfortable doing this, you could always ask someone else to do the editing, of course, right? Like just do it probably the same way. At the end of the day, then the student can come back to it, right? And then be able to right click on each change and be able to accept or reject it or completely rewrite it again. They could just reject it and be like, okay, like I like kind of what my parents suggested here, but not exactly. So they're going to go in and rewrite it, right, to kind of incorporate some of the things that were suggested. What else can I say here? Um, so this is kind of part of the iterative process as well, right? So again, you're not writing this all at once, and so you're kind of scheduling time in the between like exams and things like that to be like, okay, maybe I need a break from studying. I'll write an essay tonight, right, for this one. And then it got to this when Spencer and I kind of had our system going. He could actually tell me like, oh, I read through the Carleton questions tonight, and I noticed that like question 4 is very similar to what I submitted for the University of Alberta, like question 2. Can you just copy it over? So I was like, okay, so I'll just copy over what he already wrote for that one. So it's set up for him. And then he goes in and he just edits it again, right? So that's how the leverage kind of happens, is because like, okay, they could have applied for 3 schools, 2 or 3 schools by themselves, but maybe with assistance, they could kind of double that and apply to more. Just be aware that it's it kind of it will allow you it will burn you out if you apply. I think at the end of it, Spencer and I were just like completely okay, like we were just done after like the eighth one. The eighth one was just kind of like clicking stuff and just trying to get it through. So there's also some strategy there. What we did was we started with a university that wasn't Spencer's first choice, but we thought that it had a robust enough application process that we could kind of use it. Like would be somewhere that he would still attend, but it would work well as kind of the first one. And I think we also looked at the deadlines, and it was like the earliest deadline too. So it kind of gave us a good place to kind of start using this system, right? And then we could kind of refine it as we went forward. So lastly, check and submit. So this is where you can really appreciate kind of doing that that separation of labor, right? So if you've done it kind of the way we've described here, the student would never have actually gone into the real application, because at the end of it all, so for example, the student has said like, okay, mom or dad, I have finished the essays for University of Toronto. Like, you can go ahead and put it in, right? So so the parent will just go into the Google Doc, all they would have the student would have already accepted, rejected all the changes. They're just copying and pasting all the essay questions back into the application, right? And then when you're about to submit, then the student sits down and looks through the entire application from beginning to end, make sure their name is spelled correctly, their birth date is in properly, addresses, everything. So it they're looking at it with fresh eyes to catch any mistakes, right? Then they're looking at the courses that the parents has actually entered already in their grades, right? They'll be looking at it for the first time, so they'll be like, okay, right, like, this was all done correctly. And then they're just checking through the essays to make sure it was the right essay that was pasted in, and that the word count. So the nice thing about the applications online is that the word counts will actually pop up. So you're actually looking at just making sure that the word counts actually do match properly. And then at the end of that, all that, then, the student can say, okay, we're good. This works. Then you're going to submit. The parent does still have one last role, is to put in your credit card number, and then before you click submit, because then that's how you pay for the application at the very end. And then when you click submit, then it goes in. So tried it. So with that, kind of finishes one, and it's a very nice feeling when you finally send one, but it's also, there's this feeling of terror as well, because essentially, like, that's it, you've done one, and you can't change it anymore, it's gone, right? All the time you've been spending the last month or two changing things over and over again, that's it, you've kind of settled on it, and it's sent. And then you kind of can take a break. So Spencer and I would, like, you wouldn't go right into the next application. So this is why you should really start as early as possible. That's why we say October is kind of when you start, because that's kind of when the applications are actually available, right? So you can kind of start then looking at the questions already. That'll give you the convenience of being able to take breaks in between your submissions, right? So you're not, like, at the end submitting everything at once. Also, you don't want to submit on the very last day when the deadline is, because the IT issues always happen, right? You don't want to be caught up having to call the university because some internet outage, or their servers got overwhelmed or something like that, and you missed the deadline. So you're going to have to work through with them to kind of rectify that. Anyway, so that's sort of everything that we had done. Um, uh, and I'll turn it over back to Michelle, and we can go through questions.
Sorry, I was stumbling for my mute button. Yeah, that's all we've got as far as the questions. So we did wanted to leave some time for questions. So here, remind me, can people just unmute themselves? So what's the best way to do this?
The Q&A is open right now, so they
Okay.
can type their questions in there, and then Sean
Okay.
and then Sean will be able to see them and answer them.
Can they come off mute them?
I'll look at the Q&A. Okay.
Yeah.
No questions yet, but I guess,
Well,
so if anybody wants to, oh, can they unmute?
yeah, can they mute?
We don't, well, they'd have
Oh,
to
okay.
either raise their hand and then find them
Oh,
and stuff.
raise their
So
hand. Okay.
yeah, we don't have that right
let me
now.
just see.
Okay, I'll stop sharing firstly.
Sean, while we're waiting, maybe just if you don't mind sharing, how did you guys do? Like, what was it was a lot of work, and then what was the result? I think I'm sure everybody would appreciate knowing.
Oh yeah, so fortunately Spencer did get into, I think we applied to 7, and he did get into, I believe so yeah, I think it was 7, and then he got into 6 and got waitlisted on the 7th one.
Right.
But by then it was, we had already made this decision, and the seventh one, we didn't well, it wasn't something that was, that he had to wait for or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, his first choice because of the programs was UBC, and he UBC was one of the latest ones to actually send an acceptance, which was nerve wracking because we had to wait, quite a while to get that one.
Right, thank you. We'll start from the top. So Catherine is asking, could a student apply on their own, or is the parent involved, or is the parent involvement needed?
Yeah, so of course the students can apply by themselves for sure. Um, what we just went through really is just a way to help and maybe leverage, because things are so competitive these days. I do get the question a lot with regards to well, how can I help, right? And this was kind of a way that we had found that the parent could help without kind of writing the actual application for them. So I can see the questions. Do you want me to just go through them, Michelle? Hello. Oh, am I
Sorry,
on?
yes, go ahead. I was muted. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, okay, sorry. Okay, so I am worried. So this is the next question. I am worried my son uses AI to write. How is your role in essay writing? That one's a good question. Probably something you should ask Mr. Taggart, Mr. Achille. We know that a lot of these universities are now employing detectors, so they can go through and detect if there was AI involved in the writing. So just be careful with that. And I think, yeah, that would be a question for Mr. Taggart and Mr. Chili, how, like, what is allowed, what is not. In my professional life, I use AI to write as well. But I'm not being, I'm not applying for stuff. I'm writing to present and things like that. So yeah, that anyway, I'll defer that one to Mr. Chili and Mr. Taggart. They probably know more closely what is allowed and what isn't. So the next question. Are application deadlines and required document deadlines the same? Not necessarily, and it depends on the program. Um, so I can give the example of when we applied to architecture with Spencer. He kind of had a deadline for the main application to UBC, which was like, I think, January, and then there was a secondary application. There was a secondary deadline in February when he had to submit his creative test. So essentially, there's like 3 projects that he actually had to complete and then photograph and then send. So there was a separate deadline for those. Okay. The next question: do you have any pointers for U.S. college applications? My experience with the U.S. is that I graduated from an American school, and my experience without applying to the U.S. would be pretty far back now. I'll say that if you are interested in applying to U.S. schools, make sure you take the pre-SATs. The, um, and again, that would be something to talk to Mr. Taggart about, because they actually hold it at VC, as far as I understand. The pre-SAT. So in order to get into a U.S. school, you have to take the SATs. But there is, for those in grade 10, I believe you can sign up for the pre-SATs. And the nice thing about the pre-SATs is if you check the boxes at the beginning, they will actually send your information, your test scores, and your like kind of your bio information, like your name and your school and things like that, to a bunch of other schools who are looking for specific in the US, who are looking for specific types of like certain grade bands and things like that. And you will, and when I was applying way back in 96, I got offers, like application forms from other schools that I never heard of, but were actually good schools after I looked at like or researched them a little bit more. So if you are applying to the US, I would highly recommend you take the pre SATs. And um, I don't think the U.S. schools applications are that much different from the Canadian ones in terms of they have an essay requirement, but they do require the SATs, so that is kind of a big deal with regard to just getting your score in for that one. Okay, so hopefully that covers that one. The next question here is, were there interviews for any of the programs? No, there weren't. Oh, sorry, that's not true. So let me read the whole question first. Were there interviews for any of the programs, and could you explain more some of the projects your son needed to submit? Thank you. Okay, so were there interviews? There was an interview question for Spencer's architecture application. It was nerve wracking because the way they structured it was you got a minute and a half. They gave you the question ahead of time, and then there was another app you had to log into, and it would record your response to that question. But you got three practices that they would kind of record for your purposes, and they kind of play it back to you, but they wouldn't actually save it and send it to the admissions reviewers. You only got one chance when you finally hit like, okay, I'm ready. You hit record. You have a minute and a half, right? You record it. You don't get to look at it, and then it sends it automatically. You only get like that's it. That one try after you've like so. Spencer and I had to like set up a teleprompter. First he had to go and like look at the question, actually respond to the question, and then we had to set up a teleprompter and like have so that it would it would display his response so that it wouldn't be so nerve wracking, and he could actually just read it with the proper expression into the camera. That's how we set it up. So there wasn't an interview, but there was that aspect of kind of like an interview question that you had to deliver verbally, and it was recorded. Um, so explain some of the projects. So with UBC and some of the other architecture schools, I think Carleton and another one, they have a separate application. So you kind of finish the application for the main school, and then you had to go and fill in the application for the architecture school. And then some of them would just say, okay, submit like so many works that you have done over the last 2 years that kind of just show like what you've done. Some of the other schools had like, oh, here's a specific prompt. I think the UBC one said like build a lampshade the for the flashlight on your phone, right? And your phone would have to sit inside the lampshade and give light and things like that. So you had to build something like that, put it in, take photographs of it, document the inspiration, how we came up with it, all that, and then we had to submit all that. So there was a lot of that. What's what we used Canva for was to like set up and actually lay out or the actual documents and then turn them into PDFs and submit them. I believe that helps. The next question. Some universities have two different deadlines. Oh, sorry, I don't know. Yeah, I think that one was incomplete. Oh, for early admission. Okay, so um, early admission, as far as I understand, is your choice. Um, your there, so it's kind of a rolling thing, as far as I understand. And this would be another question for Mr. Chili and Mr. Taggart, who would probably give you a better kind of framing for it. My understanding is early admission is kind of a rolling thing, so that there's a deadline. And then if you want to apply, you have to submit before that deadline, right? And then they'll start considering those questions, and then so those applications, and then they kind of accept them on a rolling basis. So as they'll start getting those pools, and as they, oh, we really like this person, they accept them ongoingly. At the same time that everybody else's application comes in, so you kind of get the first look, right? But the thing is, you don't know if you made that cut or not, right? So apply if you're really sure you want to get into that school and you can make the deadline. Like I remember Spencer and I talking about like, is there enough time to make a solid application, right? And the solid application is probably more important than making the early admission cut. So that's something you have to weigh. Does the university have undergraduate architecture school? Okay, so that's that's not true. UBC does offer an undergraduate Bachelor of Design degree, which is what Spencer's in. Um, it is called the Bachelor of Design in Architecture, Landscape Architecture, and Urbanism. So you can't practice as an architect after you finish from it, right? Because by definition, to be an architect, you have to have a master's degree. but Spencer was wanted to do that one because he wanted to kind of get a base design training, and it's taught by apparently like Ivy League educated architects and things like that. So that was kind of the first step he wanted to take in doing that. So it's not an architecture degree per se, but it is a undergraduate degree taught under the architecture school in UBC. What were some of the unique things that you would suggest highlighting about your son? Sports, academics, etc. Do different schools programs have different preferences? Um, sorry, let me take a drink. So I know Spencer kind of highlighted a lot of the traveling he did with that he was able to do through VC. So one of them was an action team trip that he got to go with 3 other students to New York, and that was fully paid for by I think the Edmund Rice kind of schools, and they brought together those students from other Edmund Rice schools together in New York, and they kind of had a great time, like 3 days where they were kind of exchanging information, learning from each other, and things like that. So that was one thing that he really talked about. He talked about um, what it was like. You know, we live in a multi generational house. My mother has Alzheimer's. We live with her. We kind of deal with that condition on a daily basis. Um, uh, what else? Like those are kind of the things that he picked out. Oh, language. You know, as he said from the sample that was there, other languages he understood, not necessarily speak. Interesting experiences. You don't want them to be too old, so probably something that happened maybe grade 10 would be the oldest. What else could you do? Yeah, something that you think would be that not everybody does, right? Or if you've had actually, one thing that you could think about that would be interesting, and I've heard admissions reviewers have highlighted, are if you've gone through something particularly difficult, even if it was like a failure, if you did something, you know, like a mistake or something like that, it is actually very memorable to tell the story of how you got around it or how you came back from it, something like that. So that's another suggestion that might be useful. Sorry, my dog is barking. Hopefully that's not noisy. Okay, next question. Hopefully that helps. How did you choose how long you wait if you were placed on a wait list? Yeah, so. Okay, sorry, I'll read the question. How did you choose how long to wait if you were placed on a wait list for your school of choice? Will one offer close before you get accepted from a wait list? That could happen. So with Spencer's situation, he already the first response he got was from the University of Toronto, school he wanted to go to, but his first choice was UBC because of the way the program was structured. U of T, very good school, even provided a bit of a bursary, um, but he already wanted. So we waited for UBC. I think it got pretty close. It didn't overlap. Like the U of T offer would not have expired by the time we had to respond to UBC. But the thing is, we didn't know when UBC was going to come out, and it got pretty close. I think maybe we had a week or two left on the U of T acceptance before UBC finally arrived. So there was that situation, right? You could follow up with the school, I think, but they don't want you to follow up until after the date that they've given that they would start responding to. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Um, how do you choose? I think at the end of the day, you look at where you really want to attend, and if you want to wait for it, you could also call the school. I think that's also something that people overlook. So you could call the school and just ask, like, when are we going to receive something, right, or something like that. You may not get a response, but at least you've tried. But at least with UBC and with U of T, others like all the schools we applied, I think I called them at least once with a question, and they were always able to respond, like or either email or something like that. So yeah, don't overlook just asking the school that question and see if you can get a response because we did when we asked. So okay, that's which school your son went eventually, and did he get accepted to multiple schools? So Spencer did eventually go to just choose UBC. That was his first choice for the architecture program specifically. Um, and sorry, I lost the question. What was the second part of that? Um, could you? Sorry, I missed this. I forgot the second half of the question. Uh,
I think we
okay, well,
press
sorry.
that button by accident or something. I'm just looking for.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, if you go
Here.
under answered,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
could have responded. I'm sorry, I put on
No,
answered.
it's okay.
Yeah, go back into answered. It might be in there.
Oh, for scholars, which schools? Oh, and did he get accepted to multiple schools? Yes. Okay, so he did get accepted to multiple schools. Um, and it was very painful to turn down uh, one of them that offered like a $12,000 bursary. It's like, uh, but but he did get an accepted to multiple schools. You kind of have to weigh that. I was surprised that like some of the acceptances that came with money, because they were trying to draw like out of province students. So yeah, that you kind of have to weigh what you get and what you get. I mean, if you're going to go out of province, you of course have to pay for residences and meals and stuff like that. So it will be more expensive. So they kind of know and try to offset that, things like that. Okay, and let me see. Okay, does it have to be first and second choice on application? Can we be accepted to multiple ones? So when you apply to certain schools, for example, UBC's architecture school made it clear, I think, in one of their information sessions that they would not, that if you ever that if you listed them as second choice, they probably will not look at you. Um, they just made that clear up front, because they have so few, like they only had 50 spots, and there were like probably 1,000 applications. They weren't gonna, or hundreds of applications. They weren't gonna consider anybody who would put them as a second choice. But the UBC application did have a first and second choice. So I think the way we structured it was first was architecture, and then second was fine arts or something like that, just so there would be a second choice. You would have to consider that as well, where I've heard of students who didn't get into architecture, went into fine arts, and then applied the second year. There are only like, I can only speak to UBC's program. There were 10 spots that UBC sets aside in each class for second year entry. So 50 spots for first year, and then 10 additional spots for second year entry. So there'd be a class of 60 at the end. Um, so there are other schools, like I think even Sauder maybe ones where like if you listed them as second choice, they won't look at you. So you have to find out about that as well. I would go to the information sessions. So even out of province schools will have information sessions online, right? So make sure you look them up, sign up, and then attend them. And then you can ask. Usually, you can ask questions live, or you can at least email questions in. But it's very good to listen to their information sessions, because they'll tell you right away, like, oh, like if you put us as a second choice, we're not going to look at you. So you have to be sure that you really want to go to that faculty in that school before you apply. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions, so hopefully
There
I've
was,
answered quite.
Sean, there was one question sorry, there was, sorry, let's just do two more quickly. So sorry, and I deleted that by accident. One was about what are your suggestions and insights when applying for scholarships?
So scholarships. There are some scholarships. So I think Spencer tried to apply for one. I can't remember the name of it. It was early in the year. I think you could apply for it.
Lauren?
Lauren, yes,
Mhm.
correct. That one. Yeah. What we found with, well, we kind of, he did his best efforts to kind of apply for that one. But he said it was a very good, even though we didn't get it, it was very good practice for actually writing the applications for school, for the actual schools. So um, we tried that one. At the end of the day, we didn't have time to really explore a lot of these scholarships. That's why it was a pleasant surprise when some of the schools' acceptances actually came with a scholarship attached. And some of them were just grade based, like you just had to have a certain average, and they all automatically offered you um, some money if you were out of province or something like that. So, so there was that too. Yeah, we unfortunately I can't really speak to. Again, it would be good to ask Mr. Taggart or Mr. Chili about scholarships as well.
And the last question, thank you. I was just curious, so as the acceptance, do they send you a letter or do they notify Spencer by email, the student?
It's all by email. So
Mhm.
make sure when you use an email to that it's somebody it's an email that somebody's actually checking. So we just use like Spencer's personal email so that we know he was looking at it, right? Um, yeah, everything's done by email. Um, I think if you accept it, they send you a letter, like maybe a paper letter later. But yeah, everything's done over electronically. No,
Great, thank you.
yeah, yeah. There was
Okay,
never any paper to
okay,
submit. Yeah.
thank you, Sean. Well, folks, I'll pass it on to Lauren quickly. We just have a few more minutes just to wrap up. Thank you so much. Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Sean. That was very informative. My older two are already in university, and there's things there that I'm like, oh, I remember that, or oh, that's a really good idea. So I really appreciate your time tonight, especially taking away from the game that's on hand right now. I just wanted to remind everybody that our next parent talk is November 27th, and it is sort of managing life after high school, picking the campus that may be appropriate for your son, or helping them looking at different campuses. And then once you're in, what do you do next? How do you help them manage their first apartment, their first dorm, some cost cutting ideas, just survival tips to be successful? And you're more than welcome to attend with your son. So thank you. And Michelle, I know you had some comments.
Yeah, I just put a link in the chat for the survey. So folks, if you would be so kind to click on it and just give us some answers. I have to give it about 30 seconds for each question. There's only 3 questions for you to answer. So if you just click on it, it should work, hopefully. Sean, do you want to just click on it just to see if it works? Because it's been glitchy for some reason. Because I don't see any responses yet.
It's loading.
Oh, it's loading. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, is it working?
It's on Slido.
Yeah.
There are no active polls at the moment.
Oh, okay, that's weird. Okay, try now.
Oh wait, there it is. Oh.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Okay. No, I see I
Okay.
see people are responding, I think.
Okay, that's great. Okay, awesome. So I'll just give people a few minutes. Unfortunately, the way it's set up, I have to set it up, run it one at a time. But is it live? Do you see the changes?
I can see it changing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So I'll just give people 30 seconds, and then I'll click to the next one. If people want to just respond to that. Great. Just again, it gives us an idea how do you guys care about this. And finally, the last one. And I'll leave it open. So, okay, great. Well, with that, I know that we have to, again, thank you so much for joining us for our first parent talk. We will have the second one. It's going to be actually in person. What Lauren hasn't mentioned, we'll also talk about campus visits as well. We'll give you some strategy as to how to plan those campus visits. Is it a good idea to do so? So there will be two themes to the event in November. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I hope you found it useful and enjoy the game. Cheers. Thank you so much.